Hey everybody, and welcome to Speaker Stories, sponsored by the Rocky Mountain section of the SEPM. My name is Ben Kessel, and I am on the board of RMS-SEPM as the website and social media coordinator. This is a new series that we're trying out to showcase the background of our fantastic speakers that we have at RMS-SEPM. We currently host a monthly webinar on the third Tuesday of every month. You can go to rmssepm.org and check out the upcoming presentation and look at the schedule and learn about who we are and what we do at RMS-SEPM. But the goal of this webcast is to learn more about our speakers, how they got into geology, where their career has taken them, and hopefully it's an interesting story and insightful for you guys. So stay tuned for more. We're going to continue to do this throughout the year. But our first webcast is with Amber Connor. So Amber gave a petrophysical workflow presentation back on December 14th in the Conasauga in Ohio. It was a great presentation, and we chatted right before the holiday break, and it was a great interview. So we hope you like it. Stay tuned for more, and as always, thanks for being a part of RMS SEPM. Amber is a research geologist focusing on carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and leads formation, characterization, site selection, CO2 monitoring, and risk management. Amber, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, as I said, we just wanted to kind of dive into your background and hear more about your story. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
So I was born in Traverse City, Michigan. However, I really can't take a claim to any specific state just because my parents were prior military. So we lived all over the United States. I never stayed in one place for very long growing up. So the United States was really my home.
What other places did you live?
Oh gosh. So Washington State, California, Texas, Mississippi. We lived in Connecticut. We lived in New Jersey. I could go on and on. Georgia, Florida. So I really have been all over the place.
Great. And then how did you get into geology? What started this all?
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to go back a little bit because I know everybody has, and this is what I've run into a lot during my life, is everybody's like, oh, I've always wanted to go into geology. I never wanted to go into geology. It wasn't even an option for me. Growing up, as I said, I lived all over the United States, constantly traveling. So I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see, I was always curious about things, and I loved science. But I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And honestly, it was biology. I even wanted to be a lawyer at some point. And I just didn't have things figured out. So when I was getting ready to graduate high school, I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to see the world. However, I got married at 18 years old. I don't have any kids, but I met my husband. He was in the military, which my father was very upset about. But I married a military man, and we were able to see, more of the United States and travel quite a bit. And so I didn't go right into college. From there, I started to do some courses, and I became a graphics design artist. So again, I'm all over the place. I enjoyed that for a short period of time. My husband got out of the military, and I'm like, okay, now I need to make a decision on what I want to do in my life. And I've seen a lot, and I know that I'm still interested in science. I'm ready to go that route. So the most logical step is not to go to college, but to go into the military. And, because my husband had a chance to see the world. He was on submarines, so he got to go to other countries and, a lot of that stuff. But that program wasn't open to women at the time. And I didn't want to do the traditional route. I didn't want to go on a ship. I wanted to see if there was something else that I could do. So I joined the Navy, and I became a CB, and that's combat constructionman. And we were able to see places like Vietnam, Korea, all these really great places, as well as being first responders to national disasters within the United States. So like the California landslides, there's a CB deployment that goes out there to help them. And that's where, when I was done, I decided that I was going to go to college. And again, nothing about geology. I went into biomolecular engineering to start off with. And as I was getting close to being done with that degree, I was up with my husband. He was doing geology at the time, a geology degree at the time. And I talked to one of the professors, and she was doing a project that was dealing with a Mars analog, or life on Mars. And she was tying in biology, geology, and physics all together. And I was fascinated. So I decided to take a complete left turn, and I started doing geology. And I just have been fascinated with it ever since. And it's just so exciting as I continue on. So I was actually able to do a research project that was funded by NASA to look for life on Mars, looking at halite crystals. So yeah, I never want to turn my back on it again.
So you're in kind of the biochemistry world. Your husband's working on a geology degree, and then so you met a professor that was working on Mars geology. Is that? Yep. That's the right summary there. So, and what were you doing? What were you looking at in halite on Mars? Tell us.
So we were looking for Mars analog environments. I worked with Dr. Kathy Benison at the time at Central Michigan University, and we were looking at fluid inclusions in halite. And within those inclusions, there's microorganisms in there, and I was able to detect what those microorganisms are and some of the different responses that they had as a response to the change in environment. So it was just different ways to detect those microorganisms using Raman spectroscopy and other methods. So that helps, like the Curiosity project, when they use Raman spectroscopy or other techniques to identify life within those crystals or those fluid inclusions.
So do you think like some of those samples will get tested on probes or rovers that are out there, or like will it be applied to some of the work that's going on in Mars?
Oh, it has been. If you look up a lot of the things that Dr. Benison has done, a lot of that stuff has been done and continues to be done. So it's really fascinating work.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. So, what did you do after school? What were your career?
So there was a couple of options that you had when you graduated. I only had a bachelor's at the time when I finished my geology degree. And most of the students end up either going environmental or oil and gas. Oil and gas provided more opportunities for me to explore and go more places and to do more things as far as, studying the subsurface. So I went oil and gas for a period of time. And it was really fascinating. I did offshore. I worked with Halliburton, did offshore in the Gulf Coast, and it was really, really intriguing work. And but I knew that I wanted to expand even beyond that. And my friend Autumn Hagsma, who's actually my colleague at Battelle Memorial Institute, had called me up, and she told me about this great, place that she was working. It was a non-for-profit company, one of the largest in the United States, and she just talked about some of the fascinating work that they were doing with carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects, and all the different tools and methodologies that we use in oil and gas industry, they're using, and then they're doing additional research and characterization of places all around the world. So I was really excited, and she's like, you should put in an application. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, I'll do that. But looking at the criteria for the position, I wasn't qualified. It didn't look like I was qualified. And this is something that I really do want to get out there for a lot of people going and looking at other opportunities, and they see the criteria that application or that job rec has, and they don't meet it, go for it. Because I did have the experience that was necessary for this job, because I found a connection. I have oil and gas industry experience. I knew about subsurface logging. I knew about different techniques and the processes that happen when we're out logging, that I was able to, take that experience and transfer it to what I do at Battelle and help out with those characterization techniques and, expand on their research and technology. So it was really exciting to be able to bridge my past experience with what we do at Battelle, even though it doesn't look like I was qualified, just on those job rec criteria. I really was.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I think one of the coolest things about your presentation last week was, it was a very similar workflow that we've seen in the oil and gas industry before, but, obviously looking for a different application of sequestering CO2, and it's pretty interesting, and it seems like. A lot of the times we kind of talk about, the transitioning out of oil and gas into other industries, and maybe it's similar methodology, but different fluids or different application. That seems to be your experience. And, what was it like going from oil and gas into the other side of the industry? Like, was it a pretty smooth transition? What was your petrophysical background before you got to Battelle? Was that something you learned from them, or was that something that you transitioned from oil and gas into your current role?
Yeah, I transitioned some of that from oil and gas, but it's different in respects to, we're looking in oil and gas. You're looking for those plays. You're really focusing on those formations, whereas what we do at Battelle is we're looking for reservoirs that have porosity and permeability, and we're not necessarily looking for plays. That doesn't mean that we don't do enhanced oil recovery CCUS storage, because that's part of the utilization in that acronym there. But the big part of that is taking and tweaking some and transitioning what I learned from oil and gas and applying it to what we do here, or what we do at Battelle. It was a big transition, just because, like I said, I'm prior military, so my life's always been very structured. Grew up in a military family, married a military, man, and then continued on with the military life. And oil and gas is also very structured. I lived on an oil rig, and that's for a month or more at a time, and hopping from oil rig to oil rig to oil rig. And it's a very structured lifestyle. You get up, you do your job, you eat, you sleep, and you just keep doing the same things over and over and just take the day, as it goes. Whereas Battelle, you have a little bit more flexibility. Maybe one day you're, doing a series of literature searches and you're reading about these things, and the next day you're doing all of these different types of calculations and cluster analyses, and it's a very dynamic type of workflow, and you really have the opportunity to think outside of the box. And that's a little bit different than what you do in oil and gas. It's a little bit different than what you do in the military. So it was really fascinating, but it was a transition to go from that point of, the military versus oil and gas to a research facility. And I love that I get to think on problems outside of the box and figure out solutions that are presented to me. So it is a difference, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, cool. That's interesting you say that. So I haven't been in the military personally, but I have some family members that I have been. I've spent some time on bases and even on an aircraft carrier before. And when I go to the rig, I kind of get a very similar feeling. So I think it's really interesting to kind of bring that that comparison between the two, because there's it's definitely very structured. That's really cool. Tell us a little bit more about Battelle and what you do, or what the company does, and kind of the mission of the company.
So Battelle, we do a wide variety of different things. I mean, we work in medical, government, with the military. The energy division is where I work. And that's all about, helping the environment, finding other ways to, what we do for carbon capture, utilization and storage is CO2 mitigation of anthropogenic CO2. But what's really fascinating about Battelle is its underlying goal is outreach. So we're one of the largest non-for-profit companies in the United States, and they really try to do outreach programs to bring science and technology to kids that normally don't have that opportunity, and to really engage students with science and technology. I can tell you, even on the projects that we do, we tie in an outreach program where we reach out to kids, we do training, we do different workshop sessions with children, and try to engage them in these types of big concepts, as well as, here's the different things that you can do with science and technology that kids don't generally get, exposed to in school, especially in geology. I can tell you that, and the reason that I didn't take that traditional route is in school, geology was just part of, a short, tiny little section of what we talked about in the sciences. It's mainly biology, it's mainly chemistry. So you don't really talk a lot about geology. And it's exciting to see kids go, oh, I could do this? Yeah, I'm so excited. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And you can learn more about Battelle at battelle.org. And Amber, thank you so much for being the first guest on our first podcast. You can find out more about RMS-SEPM at rms-sepm.org. We have a monthly webinar where you can register for free. They're free, and you can see great presentations like the one Amber gave last week. But again, thanks again, Amber, and hopefully talk to you again soon.
Thank you.